Everyone, ask you if you would rise for a salute to the flag. And then at the end, if we would do a moment of silence for Lorraine Bull, who passed away on September 6th. She's a lifelong resident of Maplewood. I think she lives in the house that she was born in. I think it was something there. She was a recipient of the Maple Leaf Award, former president of the Seniors Club, and former treasurer of the Duran Hedden House and Garden. So after the Pledge of Allegiance, we'll have a moment of silence for Lorraine Bull. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. For Lorraine Bull. Thank you. Pursuant to Section 5, Chapter 231, Public Laws 1975, this is to state for the record that adequate notice of this meeting has been provided to the public by posting and maintaining the annual notice of regular meetings on the bulletin board of the municipal building, by mailing the annual notice of regular meetings for 2014 to the News Record and the Star Ledger in December 2013, and by filing said notice in the office of the Township Clerk.
Mr. Brownlee?
Here.
Mrs. Larrier? Ms. Leventhal? Here. Mr. Ryan?
Here.
Mayor DeLuca.
Here.
Whereas Chapter 231, Public Laws of 1975, commonly known as the Open Public Meetings Act, requires all meetings of public bodies be open to the public, and whereas Section 7 provides that the governing body has the discretion to permit, prohibit, or regulate the active participation of the public at any meeting, and whereas desire this governing body to comply with the provision of this act, same time to conduct its business in an orderly and expeditious manner, now therefore be resolved by the Township Committee, Township Maplewood, does hereby prohibit, except as set forth in the formal agenda, active participation in the deliberations of the governing body by the public, and except as otherwise prescribed by law, does limit the public to the observation of the actions and discussions of the governing body at all of its regular and special meetings.
So moved. Second.
Mr. Brownlee?
Yes.
Ms. Leventhal? Yes. Mr. Ryan?
Yes.
Mayor DeLuca.
Yes, thank you. Good evening, everyone. Sorry we're late. We had we had a little difficulty finding a room to meet in here. One of the nice things about is having air conditioning here. One of the difficult things is that it's a police station and everything is locked. So we couldn't get into our regular conference room, and then we couldn't find the person with the key to get into our other conference room. So we got delayed by a little bit, and we ended up coming out here a little late. So we're sorry for that. If no one has any objection, I would suggest we move the public comment before the presentation by Davies so that we give an opportunity of anyone who would like to speak to us, that opportunity sooner rather than later. So let's do the public comment first. Is there anyone who would like to speak to the Township Committee?
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of the Township Committee. For the record, I'm Deborah Collins, Director of Small Business Development and Affirmative Action for the County of Essex and the county's liaison to the Township of Maplewood. There are two announcements this evening. One of them has been updated. Oktoberfest, which was originally scheduled for Saturday, October 4th, 2014, will now take place Saturday, October 11th from 11 a.m. to 4 p.m. By the way, it's an event that takes place at the Essex County Environmental Center. It features all kinds of wonderful activities, including 4-H crafts and games, bird watching, canoeing, hiking, face painting, autumn photo opportunity, nature arts and crafts, lots of wonderful things. Our co-sponsors are Whole Foods and TD Bank. If you are interested in more information, please call 973-228-8776. That's 973-228-8776. I'm particularly proud of the next announcement. This is a booklet entitled Let's Play. It's a guide to advanced activities and facilities of the Essex County Park System. And one of our women-owned business enterprises, Iris Communications, created it. Plug for Iris. It's actually beautiful, and it's the fall-winter edition of this booklet. I've left several copies with the Township Clerk, and we hope that the public will enjoy all the offerings of the County of Essex. Do you have any questions or concerns that I may take back to my colleagues at the county?
I think it's worth just mentioning again the change for the Hazardous Household Waste Day, which is going to be next Sunday. And our website will be clear about that. So, thank you.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ms. Collins.
Is there anyone else who would like to address the Township Committee? Okay, seeing no one, we will close that public comment period. We'll have another one a bit later. And now we will have the Davies contractor with regard to the Springfield Avenue site right across the street. I can see it from my chair right here.
Mayor, members of the committee, my name's Joseph Vena, V-E-N-A. I represent the contractor Davies. We're here at your request, based upon our appearance here several months ago and wanting us to come back. I had submitted a schedule and expected that things would be on schedule, which I believe they pretty much are. I'd like to answer any questions or respond to any issues that the committee may have with respect to development. I'm very happy this evening to see that you can see where we're going with this. The whole first floor is done. I have Gus Leader with me this evening, who is our general contractor, who can respond to any questions you might have about further progress, which I can tell you about, but I'd rather you hear it from him with respect to the second floor, which is going to be going up within the week, and the roof will be closed down, but they're pretty much on schedule. There was a bump on the road with respect to the adjacent property owner, although the developer had an agreement with the owner regarding the chimney and the air conditioning thing had to be relocated. The tenant caused a little issue which resulted in a delay in the air conditioning relocation being resolved. Actually, as a result of that, the contractor lost a week or two of construction. That has been resolved, and the wall on the left side will be completed tomorrow, and the air conditioning is going to be relocated, and all those issues have been taken care of. If there are any questions with respect to the specifics, Gus Lead is here to answer them and give you some feeling of how this is going along, and I think it's going along pretty well now. Would you like him to come up?
Yeah, let's have him come up. Mr. Bradley, do you have a question before, or?
I have a couple.
Go ahead.
Yeah, just a couple of questions. At the July 15th meeting, Mayor DeLuca asked for an explanation of the holdup at that time since April, and Barrick Don explained that, as he put it at the time, environmental concerns, namely underground oil tanks that needed to be removed and soil remediated, had caused the delays. And he said that Davies was currently waiting for a letter of approval from the Department of Environmental Protection, which he said is forthcoming. Has that been received?
Yes,
Okay.
we submitted to the town.
What's that?
We sent it to the town already.
Okay.
Yeah, Mr. Menard, yeah.
Okay. He also said on that date that the framing and the roofing would be completed at the end of August. And I think you're John Leader, right?
Yeah, no,
Okay, yeah. Gus, I'm sorry. I apologize. Gotcha, okay. Said that the roof will be completed no later than August 31st. Now, if I look outside, I don't think it's completed, unless I'm mistaken, it's not. So what's the status of that? Because it's not completed as of August 31st. Today's September, what's today?
16th.
September 16th.
Yes, I do understand. We have a couple of difficulties with the store next door, with the lady. She delayed for 3 weeks. We have a letter over there. We had an agreement before. I went to the
Agreement with the owner.
of the building, and I went to the 4 or 5 guys. I had my electrician waiting for 3-4 hours, and the lady finally showed up. When we go in, she went off on us, and she called the cops. And you have a report from the cops, from the police department, and she threw us out. So this is the whole cause of the problem of the, as you see, if you see the left side is not completed because I cannot connect all the, the micro-level, all the, the framing without that wall going up. Mm-hmm. So finally, we got it removed yesterday, which was Monday, right?
Monday.
Yeah, we removed yesterday, and tomorrow you see the wall going up. and everything is gonna be completed. We hope we're gonna get in 2 weeks, the roof is gonna be done.
Okay, so two more weeks for the roof?
Yeah, the roof is gonna be done, the windows are ordered, the bricks are ordered, everything is in line.
Right. Yeah, I saw the schedule and status from Barrick Don. I hope I'm pronouncing that correct.
Yeah,
Barrick Don, regarding the windows and things like that. When I looked at it, it was kind of like more like a schedule, not a status. So some of these things that you're giving me here weren't in there. So I'm happy to hear that. In that, though, also, and you've mentioned a couple of other things. For example, the roof was going to be completed by August 31st, but now we're hearing it's more like 2 weeks from today, which is more like September 31st or September 30th. In the schedule and status from Barrick Dunn, it doesn't actually say that the completion is still anticipated by the end of the year. Now, I don't pretend to know anything about construction, but since he said it would be completed by the end of the year, it would have been nice if he was here, but is he still saying that the completion is still anticipated by the end of the year? I guess I want to know that.
Yes, the completion is gonna be done by the end of the year. You see all the face of the building, all the building, you're gonna see different building by the end of the year.
The building will be all closed.
All closed, all closed up,
It'll be completed by the end of the year?
yes.
Okay. And at the last meeting, Ms. Larry, who's not here today, she'd asked for a schedule for completion, if that could be submitted no later than September 30th. And it says Lita, I'm not sure if that was you or your brother, said that it could be. So I guess the question is that still the case?
September 30th.
That's what I'm reading, yes.
And what do they have to deliver at that time? A
It was
report?
a schedule for completion, if that could be submitted by September 30th.
September, that was December, end of the year.
Okay, maybe it was a typo.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. All right. Okay, those are my questions.
Mr. Desiderio?
I just have one question, because I want to make sure we're not going to be back here. Are you saying you're going to have a completion, are you talking about a certificate of occupancy by the end of December?
No, no,
You're talking about a type building?
type building and rough work done, no, sir? No.
But why don't you tell us what's going to be done by the end of December, so there's no...
By the end of December, it's gonna be done. The face of the building, the back of the building, everything out is gonna be a roof, everything completed. Bricks in the front, everything.
You're still going to be working inside?
I'm gonna work inside, and I'm getting more people, as we speak, to get more working more inside, but it's not gonna, I cannot get them 3 months.
I'm not asking, I just
Yes.
want to make sure that
Absolutely,
we're all on
yes.
the same page as to what we're understanding, what our expectations are by December 3rd. That's all.
Right, notwithstanding any, holidays and the weather and all that, it'll be sealed in. You made the distinction, though, in terms of certificate of occupancy versus, you called it a tight building, if you would. Is it fair to ask when a certificate of occupancy is anticipated?
Assuming that you have a tight building on December 31st, when you're going to have the interior done?
We, approximately, I think by April, between April and May.
At that point, once your building is tight, then you can bring your electricians in, you can bring your plumbers in, you can bring your sheet.
I'd like to get everything closed because of the weather, and I can work inside.
Of course, at that point, when you do come, that's
But when you people come out, all you find people, you're gonna see different faces of building and beautiful building in front of you. That's what I'm gonna tell you to do, to get as soon as possible.
I just want to make sure there was no confusion.
Okay. Anyone else have any other comments?
No. Glad to see the
Okay.
progress.
Thank you very much.
I'm just assuming that, subject to the completion and the work done as presented tonight, unless there's some major problem, we won't have to anticipate another appearance unless I'm advised by Mr. Desiderio.
Right. We will keep an eye on you, and if necessary, we'll
So I just want
invite
to
you
be sure,
back.
because the last time, we were programmed to appear tonight, but at this point, if things go smoothly, there's no programming.
I appreciate your comment, if I may interject. And at the last meeting, I noted you were very insistent upon, okay, we said September 16th, but do we really have to appear? Do we really have to appear? Do we really have to appear? And I'm hearing you do it again tonight. And frankly, keeping this project on a short leash is my preference, because that seems to be what keeps the project moving forward. So I even found out things tonight that I didn't know, that, we got some very superficial stuff. It was more of a schedule, not a status, and even the schedule was incomplete. So, if you keep asking, I'm going to insist upon a date anyway.
I just want you to know know that if we have to come back, we will.
Okay.
Hopefully, we don't anticipate we have to, but if Mr. Desiderio advised me, we'll be here. Absolutely.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Stay on schedule.
Have a nice evening. Thanks.
See you at the opening.
Okay. I did want to mention that we have a representative from Troop 21 here. Thank you for coming out. And hopefully we'll keep you engaged.
3 cheers for Troop 21.
We have a couple of ordinances on, 3 ordinances on final passage.
Mr. Mayor, number 7, ordinance number 2757-14. It's an ordinance to amend Chapter 257 of the Code of the Township of Maplewood entitled Vehicles and Traffic, turning onto Villa Terrace. This ordinance will regulate turns onto Villa Terrace from Valley Street.
So this ordinance, which prohibits right turns as you come north on Valley onto Villa Terrace, has been published, copies posted on the bulletin board in the municipal building, and copies made available to the general public in accordance with the law. Is there anyone who would like to speak on this particular ordinance? Seeing no one, we'll close the public hearing. Mr. Ryan, can we get a motion?
Chair, I move this ordinance be adopted as a whole and the clerk be directed to publish the same as a passed ordinance in the Maplewood South Orange News Record according to law.
Second.
Any discussion? Please call the roll.
Mr. Brownlee?
Yes.
Ms. Leventhal?
Yes.
Mr. Ryan?
Yes.
Mayor DeLuca?
Yes, thank you. Another ordinance on final?
Mr. Mayor, item number 8, ordinance number 2758-14, an ordinance to amend Chapter 257 of the Code of the Township of Maplewood entitled Vehicles and Traffic. This ordinance will change parking times along Donnell Road and Baker Street.
This ordinance has been published, copies posted on the bulletin board in the municipal building, and copies made available to the general public in accordance with the law. Is there anyone who would like to speak on this ordinance? Seeing no one, will close the public hearing. Get a motion, Mr. Ryan?
Chair, I move this ordinance be adopted as a whole and the clerk be directed to publish the same as a passed ordinance in the Maplewood South Orange News Record according to law.
Second.
Any discussion? Please call the roll.
Mr. Brownlee?
Yes.
Ms. Leventhal?
Yes.
Mr. Ryan?
Yes.
Mayor DeLuca?
Yes, thank you. And our final.
Item 9, Mayor, ordinance number 2759-14. It's an ordinance to amend Chapter 257 of the Code of the Township of Maplewood entitled Vehicles and Traffic. This ordinance will authorize the installation of stop signs at the intersection of Forest Road and Oakland Road.
Is there anyone who would like to speak on this ordinance? Seeing no one, will close the public hearing, and we get our motion maker, Mr. Ryan.
Mr. Chair, I move that this ordinance be adopted as a whole and that the clerk be directed to publish the same as a passed ordinance in the Maplewood South Orange News Record in accordance with the law.
Second.
As a whole.
As a whole, not
Not as a part.
No, not as part.
As a whole.
As a whole.
In its entirety, if you will.
As a
Okay.
whole, or is it?
So it's been moved and seconded. Is there any further discussion? Please call the roll.
Mr. Brownlee?
Yes.
Ms. Leventhal?
Yes.
Mr. Ryan?
Yes.
Mayor DeLuca?
Yes, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Mr. Ryan, you have a board and committee appointment you'd like to make?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, we have a vacancy on the Historic Preservation Commission. We have a citizen who's been acting with the committee as a volunteer who is asked to be appointed to the vacancy on the committee. This request is endorsed by the members of the commission. It's good to have an interested person in place, so I'd like to suggest that we appoint Daniel Wright to the vacant position on the Historic Preservation Commission. So I'd move that.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Please call the roll.
Mr. Brownlee?
Yes.
Ms. Leventhal?
Yes.
Mr. Ryan?
Yes.
Mayor DeLuca?
Absolutely, yes.
Thank you.
Discussion items. Mr. Desiderio, would you take us through the auto repairs? You sent us a draft.
I did, Mayor. Pursuant to the discussion at the last Township Committee meeting, I drafted an ordinance that would prohibit the repair of motor vehicles within the public right-of-way, specifically those repairs except in an emergent situation. An emergent situation, I suggest, would be a period of 4 hours, and only then so long as the vehicle is located in an area that does not constitute a hazard or unreasonable interference to pedestrian or motor vehicle traffic. So this was my attempt at meeting your requirements, and I leave it for your discussion and suggestions.
Mr. Ryan?
Thank you. I think this is great. I just had a couple of small questions about it.
Sure.
So my tire goes flat, changing the tire falls into that emergency
Yes.
thing, right? Suppose, God forbid, I mean, suppose there's a car accident and there's a wreck and it takes, a little bit of time to get that
Well,
removed.
the police will be summoned, and they will arrange for a tow truck, and it would be, unless it was the middle of a snowstorm, it certainly won't take 4 hours for them to remove the vehicle.
Great. I was thinking, would we have to carve out an exception for situations where it might take a little bit longer than 4 hours? But it says
I have to say, Mr. Ryan, I think, and it might, but I hardly think the police are going to give a ticket to
Yeah.
a vehicle.
So it's not an issue.
My suggestion.
I'd like to thank you for being able to take our discussion last week. That was a couple of pages worth of in the minutes.
I've been
and get
doing
it-
this for a while, Mrs. Levin.
And get it down.
It's like I can read your minds.
Thank you.
Mr. Brownlee?
I had a couple of questions. One was, again, trying to distill the results of all that discussion into this ordinance. But I was trying to recall whether, wasn't one part of the discussion to also find a means to disallow repairs in the parking lot as well, not just on the street, or is that
It's
not?
very difficult to do on private property, but
Pardon?
it's very difficult to try to do that on private property. So what the suggestion was at the last meeting, and I believe the mayor has confirmed to me that was the case, that was going to be part of the approvals for the facility, specifically on Springfield Avenue. Their approvals were contingent on not allowing any repairs on the facility.
Okay, so that'll be handled separately in a sense.
I believe.
It's not handled as part of
Yes,
the ordinance, okay.
it was made as one of the conditions of approval, and also they have to post a sign inside alerting their clients that they cannot repair. And then there's a definition that we are using that was submitted to the planning board attorney. How much of that he uses in the condition, I don't know, but it'll be a sign that says no repairs in the parking lot.
So what, so if it's not in the ordinance, but it's done as part of that, if someone basically they're policing that, but if someone does it and they don't police it, is it a summonsable offense if it's not in the ordinance?
They're violating the approval, it would be a zoning
So,
offense.
yes, the answer is yes.
Okay.
So not the car, let's say somebody changed a tire there, and they did not tell the person, you have to leave, you can't do that, then they would be violating their zoning approval. So the advanced auto would get the ticket, or the zoning violation.
Okay. And the other question had to do with, again, you answered Mr. Ryan's question, Mr. Desiderio, about whether changing a tire constitutes an emergency situation, and I guess I'm still a little wary in terms of what quote-unquote constitutes an emergency, because that's permitted. And I had a hypothetical example, whether or not the ordinance as written technically would permit someone to basically, roll their car out to the street and work on the engine block. The car doesn't run, say 3 hours a day. It's not over 4 hours. They roll it onto the street, work on it for 3 hours, roll it back, do it like that. Is that technically permitted? What does disabled mean? And that was kind of the second part of it.
Well, my definition of disabled means that it doesn't run. I mean, that just seems to be fairly obvious.
Well, my second, if driving the car in the condition it's in would constitute, I don't know if, for example, if the windshield was cracked, you had the spider in the windshield, and it's like that. You can't drive the car like that. The car will start, but driving in that condition, I assume you get a ticket or something like that. So is that an emergency?
I don't know what you mean. Is what an emergency? Fixing your windshield in the street?
Yeah.
The answer is, yeah, I guess if your vehicle if the windshield is there and you have to call someone to fix your vehicle, I would say yes. I guess I would also say that you could move that vehicle within the 4-hour period. All right, so the answer is that although it might be an emergency and require you to stop the vehicle, you could do it. I got to tell you that, with all due respect, some of these hypotheticals are hard to, you know.
Yeah, well,
The answer-
that's my
the answer is-
wariness.
The answer is, I mean, we could always find exceptions, but the answer is, I would say that's an emergency and you have to get it done in 4 hours.
Well, I guess that's my question, because when you said, originally when I asked, what's an emergency, it was, well, the car wouldn't start, but now here we're saying something else, well, the car does start, but it's an emergency. I'm not so much criticizing the ordinance, but I'm just trying to, in terms of enforcing it, what constitutes an emergency?
Disables the vehicle, the motor vehicle, et cetera. So to the extent that you can't drive the vehicle because of the broken windshield, I would suggest that it's disabled. Now, you then need to take an affirmative step within a certain period of time to then remove the vehicle. That is 4 hours. So if you have a broken windshield, then you need to call a tow truck or you need to get that vehicle off the street within that period of time.
But could you fix the windshield in those 3 hours?
The answer is yeah. If you could call a class place to come and do it, and which is very possible.
There are places that come to your house when you have a cracked windshield, and again, we're assuming that this work can be done in someone's driveway or someone's garage.
Absolutely.
But in those cases where it can't be, or there's a case where the car is on the street and disabled on the street, it could be repaired there, but it has the timeline of being, or has the requirements of being an emergency, and then it has to be within the timeline of 4 hours. So if they had repairs on in their driveway, then it wouldn't matter. But
Well,
there
again,
are,
I was pushing the example to the street in these scenarios. So, I mean, you could repair your windshield on the street.
yeah.
You could, so again, that emergency and disabled, the terms are still a little fuzzy to me.
Well, if you have better definitions.
No, I don't.
I'm certainly
I
willing
don't.
to incorporate them.
I don't. I'm just
You know
saying I'm
what?
wary with what it is.
This is what's going to happen. If somebody gets a ticket and they want to fight it, then they're going to go to the judge and say, this was an emergency. And then the judge is either going to agree that it was an emergency or not. If the windshield, prevented the person from driving and they had to roll it out so that, it's also possible, you gave the example in one of our conversations about your inclined driveway. It may not be safe to do work on an inclined driveway that someone has, so it has to be rolled out to a more flat level, and then it would, kicks in that you have the 4 hours to do the work. But this is somebody who wants to replace their brakes, or someone who wants to do an oil change on the road, or stuff like that. That's what, or even going into advanced auto and getting light bulbs and replacing your light bulbs on Colgate or Wellesley is just not going to be permitted. And if you say at nighttime because it's an emergency, it's too dark to do the work.
Well, okay, see, that was,
And you know what? If the person does it and the cop gives the person the ticket or tells them to move on, then somebody's going to have to, then you're going to have to
well, you
adjudicate
see
it.
where it's going, yeah, because it's like, well, no, you have to drive, but if I drive, I'm going to get a ticket. Well, so.
Yeah, but then you have the option of going to the next gas station and getting it fixed. Or the cop says, you have to drive home. There's discretions that the cop has. We have to pass an ordinance that we think is the best language and the best ordinance, and if somebody wants to fight it, or somebody thinks it's not right, or there's a lot of cases, and the judge says to us, that ordinance you passed, I'm getting a lot of cases that say, this is an emergency, and I think maybe you ought to change the ordinance, then we can always change it. But I think out of the gate, this is a pretty good set of standards.
Okay, no, I was just trying to put structure around emergency and disabled.
I think, I agree with you, and I think that
Just to,
putting this in place doesn't, I think about this way. I think you and I both have a sense of how this might work, and then we put it in place and we find out what actually happens, right? There may be a different kind of thing that goes on when this ordinance is in place that didn't occur to us. There may be some loophole that we need to tighten up, but when we have the thing in place, and it's in action, and people can say, look, I thought that this sort of thing was illegal, and these people are doing this, that kind of information will help us. So it's sort of, it's kind of like a platform for getting information about the best possible way to tune it.
Understood, but I was just trying to, I guess, try to do as much of that up front rather than sort of prototyping it, to use a techie term, and then, you know, getting something to market, and then based on feedback, making changes later. I'm trying to get as much of it done up front as possible. And so I was just expressing my wariness of those two particular points.
Okay. Any other comments about it?
I think Mr. Desiderio should be directed to get us ready to introduce it next meeting, personally.
Any objections to that? Okay, Mr. Desiderio, we'll put it on introduction at the next meeting.
Understood.
Thank you, Mr. Desiderio.
Okay, we have item number 2, and Mr. Carrera, you're going to deal with this, the benefit concert request for Brendan Tevlin?
Yes, Mayor, thank you. I'm sitting in place for Mr. Manning tonight, who is attending the ICMA conference in Charlotte, North Carolina. Earlier this month, he circulated a copy of the correspondence that he received from Mr. John Butkus. He is a friend of the Tevlin family, and he reached out to us inquiring about the possibility of hosting an event at the Woodland at 60 Woodland Road. This is going to be kind of like a fundraising benefit to raise some funds to start a scholarship on behalf of Brendan, and also they're trying to see if they can get the name rights for the lacrosse field at Seton Hall. And when they first approached us, they asked us, you know, to pretty much do this without any cost in terms of the rental fee for the venue, which our office opposed. We believe that it goes against the plan that we have in order to hosting events, generating some revenue so that we can continue to renovate and fix the building. And we believe that it's one of these cases that if you allow for somebody to do this, you can have to offer the same to everybody else. So it's a little bit different of the kind of reservations that we've had as opposed to just a nonprofit or a private event. This is for, you know, a charitable cause, but it's not a nonprofit organization that is really spearing this event. So I have been in contact with Andrew Fishman, Keith Knudsen, and Mr. Butkus. We have come to the agreement that they do have some funds they can provide to rent the facility, and we are willing to suggest that, depending on the number of volunteers that they have, and they believe that they will be able to get some police officers to volunteer their time, that we would charge an amount for the rental fee based on whether or not they're able to have police officers attending. So if they have police officers attending, we would charge them $1,000 for the rental fee. If they do not have police officers, then we would charge them $1,500, and we will provide police officers. Now,
And $1,000 would cover everything, utilities, cleaning, and all that?
correct. Well, that's because they have assured us that they have enough volunteers to help with the
handle
setup,
all
the
that.
cleaning, and up. So this really just comes down to whether or not they will be able to provide police officers for security for the event.
Do we all know who Brendan Tevlin is?
Yes.
Okay. Ms. Leventhal, Mr. Brownlee?
So the costs incurred by the township are $1,000?
Well, after speaking to Andrew Fishman, we determined that the approximate cost for this event would be about $1,500 to $2,000.
Okay. And taking out the cost of police officers, we come down to?
And the volunteers that will
lowest,
be helping
1,000.
with that will be, it would be anywhere between $1,200 and $1,250.
Mr. Brownlee?
So my question is, if another request was made with similar needs/parameters, would we entertain doing that also?
Well, the next part of what I was going to report is that once Mr. Manning returns, we're going to have a conversation to come up with a different set of policies for events of this kind that we'll be ready to present to you in the future.
Ms. Leventhal?
Yeah, when I read this, I had the thought that since there are two family members that were or are employees, that very often we give employee discounts on some things. So I was wondering if we were going to be doing that with the Woodland, and would that apply? But whatever you bring back to us.
That's essentially what we're offering.
Oh, okay.
So,
Mr. Ryan?
I think we should go ahead and do this.
I agree. I would even reduce it, but that's fine if you came up with a number. I think this was, it's a situation, and I don't, it is difficult because you try to set up a policy and we don't have a policy. But, on the other hand, we had one of our own son got hurt a couple of years back, and we had a big benefit concert at the women's club, or a big benefit at the women's club, and it was in private ownership then, or essentially private ownership, so we were not charged. And when you, in that instance, $1,000 would have meant, pretty big number. I understand this. This is going to be a larger crowd, a different crowd. The price points are going to probably be different. So I think, and probably some company or somebody's going to probably cover the $1,000. So I'm okay with it. I just don't want us to get so rigid with policies that sometimes, we miss it. This was a very, very horrible crime. And there is some relationship to the family. The family has some relationship here in town, including our fire department. And if the fire department was going to have an event, we wouldn't charge them. But, so anyway, I'm okay with the $1,000,
I think we should.
the way you did it.
and we'll certainly keep your comments and concerns in consideration as we continue developing a new policy.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, I certainly have no opposition, and I would definitely encourage us to do this. I would just want to make sure that we don't put ourselves in a position where we're denying a similar request in some other capacity. And so I'm putting a policy in place I think will help us to cover that possibility.
Okay? So you have okay.
Thank you.
Mr. Desiderio, extension of the lease with the USPS.
Yes, I spoke to the Postal Service, and because of a delay in their signing the lease for the new space, the build-out was delayed, and they are interested in extending their present lease at approximately $15,400 a month through February 15th, at which time they should have the build-out done. So the move from the one location to the other location should effectively be seamless. And they have prepared a lease amendment, which I have, and with your approval, I'll have the mayor sign it, and we'll be good through February 15th, 2015.
I move that we approve the signing of this lease extension.
Second.
Any conversation, any discussion? Please call the roll.
Mr. Brownlee?
Yes.
Ms. Leventhal?
Yes.
Mr. Ryan?
Yes.
Mayor DeLuca?
Yes. Okay, item number 4 is revisions to design guidelines for Maplewood Village and Springfield Avenue. There was some work done by Phillips Price Greigel on, for the planning board in reexamining the design guidelines for both special improvement districts. And Mr. Greigel worked on it and made some recommendations. Those recommendations went to 2 committees, one at the Village Alliance, one at the Springfield Avenue Partnership. And there are recommendations to both design guidelines that are quite different from one another. The village has incorporated a lot of new guidelines around new construction because the previous guidelines were silent on that because we weren't expecting new construction in the village. So that it tends to be a little bit more of an emphasis there in the Village Alliance guidelines. In the Springfield Avenue, it talks about some of the signage, wall graphics. It actually permits now a mural program of the partnership, whereas before it wasn't allowed. It allows second floor menu signs, whereas in the village they don't allow that, but because the sidewalks are much larger here and the type of traffic is different, it would allow for a second floor sandwich sign. It talks a little bit about the signs. It doesn't use chalkboards like in the village because they really need a different kind of board here on Springfield Avenue, and it talks about sign maintenance and removal. We're ending up with, when places move out, signs stay up and they tend to become in disrepair. So what we need to do is to refer these guidelines to the planning board for their review and recommendation to us.
So are they drafted in the form of just an amended ordinance or
Yes. They're drafted in the form of,
like a change marked?
yes. Strike-throughs, different colors for
Great,
what's
great.
added, some word changes and things like that.
Excellent.
And this was we reviewed this at the Code Committee. We had the benefit of both Mr. Mittermeier and the Fire Department personnel asking some questions. We did a little bit of clarification on some of the language, and so this has already gone through one of our committee reviews.
At some point, will those not on the code committee be getting a copy?
I sent this to everybody.
Yeah, I
No,
hard copy. I got it.
Email.
I didn't get it.
Yeah,
I don't remember getting it.
okay,
Would you please resend it?
yeah,
I'm fine with your suggestion on the referral. If you'd
Yeah.
please resend it.
okay.
Do you need to?
We need to make a motion to officially refer it to the planning board.
I'd move that.
Second.
Please call the roll.
Mr. Brownlee?
Yes.
Ms. Leventhal?
Yes.
Mr. Ryan?
Yes.
Mayor DeLuca?
Yes. Thank you. And Mr. Disdare, you have a copy, the new?
I do.
Okay.
So, yes, and when, I'm sure there's going to be some changes, and it'll be, but I'm sorry, Mayor, and I was actually paying attention. The two boards have approved these?
They have, the two committees, not the boards themselves, the two committees have.
Well, I just suggest that it might, from a procedural standpoint, be a good idea for the boards to make that recommendation as well to the planning board. No?
Let's do it parallel.
Okay, I'm not
Yeah.
suggesting that it be held up, but I'm
Yeah.
simply saying, if the planning board says yes and the board says no, it
Yep.
seems to be counterproductive. That's-
Yep.
Okay.
I think each committee, each board empowered their committee to do it, but I think we can procedurally have an official vote.
Resolution from each.
Yeah, resolution from each to adopt it.
That seems like the right thing to do.
We have a consent agenda. I never told you what's on the consent agenda, so let me run through that quickly. We have a resolution on dealing with disposal of leaves, a resolution, contract for cooperative purchasing, a resolution to accept credit card payments for collection of various fees, authorization to pay bills. We have a resolution awarding a contract for a street sweeper. We have a resolution of improvements to Springfield Avenue, repaving of Springfield Avenue from the Union line to Colgate. We have a couple of insertion of special items due to grants we received from Maplewood Loves Wellness, Body Armor Grant Program, Maplewood Loves Wellness, Open Space Stewardship, Safe and Secure Communities, Shaping New Jersey Healthy Community Grant Program. We have a tax lien on Maplewood Commons, a sales certificate, and we have, we're authorizing an online tax sale. This is something new that our Finance Committee has been working with the CFO on, so we're going to try that this year. And a refund of tax overpayments, and then we have minutes of September 2nd.
I move for the approval of the items on the consent agenda.
Second.
Any discussion? Yes.
I had made some changes to the minutes from the last meeting, and I did circulate that earlier, so this motion will encompass those revised minutes? I don't know if everybody's
Yes.
seen them, they saw my,
Those changes were made.
yeah, I did see that, but I didn't, yeah,
I meant to move it as revised.
okay,
I apologize for not saying that.
it's all right, this time.
Okay. So the consent agenda with the minutes as amended, please call the roll.
Mr. Brownlee?
Yes.
Mr. Leventhal?
Yes,
Mr. Ryan?
Yes.
Mayor DeLuca?
Yes, thank you. Okay, we have public comment. Is there anyone who would like to address the Township Committee? Please say who you are first. Go right up to the mic.
Address.
My name is Ruth Ross. I've lived in Maplewood, 25, 30 years, right?
Would you say the address?
Could you say your address?
169 Maplewood Avenue, apartment 4,
No, you don't have to go that far, but that's
on the 3rd floor. This is a very private, personal comment, and I've had feelings about writing a letter about it and some reluctance. Here's the deal. I have a Beetle, which is a small car, if I'm sure most of you know. And I have had for quite a while now objections to some of these huge SUVs that are driving around Maplewood, South Orange. First of all, because most of the streets are fairly narrow and becoming even more and more crowded. Now, I don't know, I mean, I certainly don't feel that there's anything that the township could do officially. And as I said, I've had thoughts about writing letters about some of these people who buy and own these huge cars where it's just a couple or one person that is just driving around. You know, I'll spare you my interpretation of why people do this when they don't need it. I can fit in my Beetle, and I have a roof rack. I can fit 2 kayaks. I have a bike. I have a bike rack that can fit 3 bikes, and so I can fit 5 people, 2 kayaks, and 3 bikes in my Beetle, and I can still drive. So the driving of these huge SUVs in this township, parking and everything else, and of course riding my bike, which I do in Maplewood, which I've stopped doing because most of these SUVs they don't use their turn signals. It has become dangerous. So this is just obviously an anti-big SUV private comment on my part. And suffice it, that's about all I can do to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to address the Township Committee? Okay, we will close our second public comment. We have received the Chief Financial Officer's report on financing the note. Received that today. Administrative reports, Mr. Manning or Mr. Carrera?
Thank you, Mayor. I have one report, that is that last Monday, September 8th, Maplewood department heads met with Irvington department heads at the Woodland to have a little roundtable discussion as to what kind of opportunities exist between both our municipalities in terms of share services. We sat down for about an hour and a half discussing various ideas. We're going to have a conversation tomorrow at our bi-monthly department head meeting as to what was discussed, what are some of the goals that we can gear towards achieving as soon as possible, and just continue to have a collective effort with Irvington to better serve our communities. And unless you have any questions, that is all I have.
Another discussion item about needing to approve a job search.
Yes, we have job search.
Correct.
You have to present to us, you'd like a motion to move ahead with,
Yeah, so if you could please pass a motion to allowing us to move ahead in the search of a public works director.
I would move to authorize that search.
second.
please call the roll.
Mr. Brownlee?
Yes.
Mr. Leventhal?
Yes,
Mr. Ryan?
Yes.
Mayor DeLuca?
Yes, thank you. And I have a question for you. We've been talking last couple of meetings about 57 Maplewood Avenue. It's a building that was a fire. And we've gone out and get some information now. We were anticipating to have a contract to approve tonight, but that's not possible, and there's an issue with asbestos. Could you talk about that?
Correct. So we were able to determine that there is in fact asbestos in the building, and that is going to increase the cost of the demolition, which is going to, we now have to go out for bid as opposed to being able to award the contract. Mr. Mittermeier from the building department has been in contact with the company that is going to develop the asbestos specs for us to include in the bid, and once we receive that, we will be able to put it out for bid.
Do you have a sense of how long this is going to take?
My sense is that we should have it for this week, but unfortunately, Mr. Mittermeier is out sick. He's been in the hospital for the last few days, so.
Okay. When he comes back, if you can make sure it gets to the top of his pile.
Will do.
Thank you. Mr. Desiderio?
I actually have 2 items tonight, one of which involves little visual aids.
Oh, boy.
Oh, wow.
This is rather rare for you.
This is unprecedented,
Very
Mr.
rare.
Desiderio.
Color, too. Did you have someone help you?
Can we talk to the chief about doing this?
Wow.
Very nice, Roger.
Here's the deal.
Here's the deal.
Picture of the house is located on Carlton Court. Carlton Court is part of a little horseshoe.
Yes.
And I will, no, this is not my daughter's home.
Okay,
My daughter lives across the street.
okay.
Okay? Next to this is the path that
Right.
leads, the railroad would be on your right-hand side and leads into town.
Right.
Okay?
This is the path?
That's the path.
Right.
This is the town's right-of-way.
Right.
Okay? The gentleman who owns this house has requested from Mr. Burbank the ability to put up, because he has planted all of these trees, this 2-foot fence, which would be in the
Right
right-of-way.
away.
Okay? And the reason he really wants to do that is for the protection of the bushes, because the people walk their dog there, and it
Yes.
creates some hazard to the bushes.
Yes.
Okay? So, Mr.
Creates some hazard to the bushes.
some hazard to the bushes. Mr. Burbank has been out there, I have been out there, and we have seen it. The owner is the only issue that Mr. Burbank raised was the fact that during the snow plowing, they used the machine that pushes the snow, and that the town could not be responsible for any damage to the fence. So Mr. Burbank has suggested that he would not be opposed to it, and I said to the owner that I had no problem with it, provided that he understood that the town would have no responsibility for any damage to it, and I said I would bring it to you for your consideration. So that's the scoop.
No cost associated to us? You're very effective.
There's no cost associated to us?
No, none whatsoever. No, this is purely what he wants to do on the public right-of-way, and it would be on the condition, A, that whatever happened to it, he would have to maintain it. We'll put together some little agreement with regard to that the township would have no responsibility, and if for any reason it had to be removed, for any reason, it would be his responsibility to do it.
Ms. Leventhal?
And the agreement would go with the land?
Yes.
Okay.
Do you have a sense of, I mean, these are bushes here, or these are trees that are going to
Oh,
grow?
they're bushes. They're that height.
They're not going to go higher?
No, well, I may go somewhat higher, but
Yeah,
they're not going to be big trees.
I can't really see any reason to be opposed to this.
Well, you know, it does, we've denied for other right-of-way issues. I think the difference here is that this path gets used a lot.
Right.
And it's a jogging path, a bike path, a walking path, a dog walking path.
Right.
It really connects to the,
It's part of
the
the
village.
bikeway too, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
yeah. I mean, I don't have a problem with it in this case, but, you know, on a case-by-case basis, I think there's sufficient reason to try to create some separation from the public space to his space. And I think the fence will do that.
Anybody opposed?
Okay.
Everybody all right? Okay.
All right.
And your second item, you're going to show us anything more?
I do. I just wanted to report to you that as you've seen in the Star Ledger today, The Occidental case, the Passaic River case, seems to be totally settled, $190 million, somewhere in that range. I am still trying to get our money from our insurance company with regard to it, so we're following up on that. But that case is over, and we'll just keep our fingers crossed that we don't see a federal case coming down the pike. So
Who would bring a federal case?
the Department of Environmental Protection, the federal government against these polluters, but then we might get brought in again. That's what the issue is. The federal government won't bring a claim against us, but that's really where it's at. So anyway, that was my. I have nothing else, Mayor.
Mr. Brownlee?
This harkens back to earlier today, and finished off. Notwithstanding Davies' attorney's insistence that they don't need to come back in again, and I suppose they don't have to, because they're going to show progress, and I suppose we can't, as long as they're quote unquote on schedule. But can we instruct them to let us know by some means if any of the dates that they spoke about today are going to be material or different than what they said? I mean, they said, we're going to have a tight building by the end of the year. We're going to have a CO in April, beginning of May, different things. And we know things happen, but I guess my concern is that since they don't have to come in, since they're not going to presumably proactively give us any reports, they're going to be marching merrily along, and if there's any delays, we'll kind of be the last to know about it. I mean, we can kind of visually look at it, but
I'll give you two ways you can do it. Mr. Mittermeier has been keeping everybody kind of abreast of what's been going on. So if you say, I want them in next Tuesday, and we have a meeting, we'll send them a letter and they'll appear. You didn't give up your right to bring them back.
I understand that.
Number one. And number two, I'd be glad to send that letter. I'd be glad to tell them, say, listen, you made certain projections, including having a tight building by end of December, COs, et cetera. And if there's going to be any deviation from that, we want notice in advance so that you can come in and explain it. I'll be glad to send that letter.
yeah, that's what I mean. I want them to proactively send that to us.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Okay. Ms. Fritzen?
4 items, Mayor, real fast.
What'd you say, 4?
Well, this will be our last meeting here for this season.
That one of them?
And that's one of them.
Oh, thank you.
And you met here 7 times, and I think that it's been, we're getting good at it. It's the 3rd year, so
Is that 2?
I'm going to add if you keep that.
I think next year we need a set of keys.
Next year, we'll have keys.
Okay.
A little chilly in
All
here.
right, so again, at the October meeting, we'll be back at Town Hall.
Okay.
That's 3.
Volunteer dinner, I think we've agreed upon Tuesday, October 28th.
Okay.
And I wanted very much to have it at the Woodland. I don't think that's going to work out. And that is because that parking lot is being, as you know, constructed and paved. So it's really unknown. It would be unknown so close that I think we'll have to go to the Woodland next year. So I have it booked at the community center. Yes.
What time is the volunteer?
We normally have it 6:30 until 6:30 to 8:30.
Okay.
But I'll get back to you on the exact specifics. But I think that was a good date for everybody. We have a filming tomorrow on Fairview Terrace, a Zyrtec commercial. And as you know, the filmings turn around pretty quickly now. Our ordinance talks about a week notice, and it's really rough to get these filming companies to come in with a week's notice. So if we can, we turn them around. And on this particular one, we had about 3 days' notice, and everything today worked out. Sent you an email that one of your licensees, Highland Place, is closed down. The owner came in to meet with me and advised that he is officially closed, and we'll be looking for a buyer of that license, not necessarily to keep it at that location.
So it's up to us to look for a buyer?
No,
That's
he
up
is.
to him.
He's looking for, okay.
He owns a license, and he can either do nothing and hold on to it, or he can try to transfer it. But it must stay in Maplewood. Thank you very much.
Went so quickly, your 4 items.
You know, if I could make up 2 more just for Mr. Desiderio, I would.
Okay. Well, we might have
Next
some on
items, we
the
need you to make
Township Committee
pictures, if you
side.
don't mind.
And in this corner.
Any questions for Ms. Fritzen?
2 questions at least.
No,
Okay.
no.
All right, reports from elected officials. Mr. Ryan,
I have no report this evening.
look at that. Ms. Leventhal.
I have 3 items. One is that I was approached by, because we were in the same space at the same time, the Soma TV producer, and asked if I wanted the Maplewood Loves Wellness announcement to go up on the bulletin board, which I did send information about. But that, I think we should be taking advantage of that exposure to have some of our announcements on the scrolling bulletin board. So,
Don't we send our stuff over there?
You can give me the information and I get it to the person.
She gets it to Joy all the time.
And Joy, well,
do you give it to her?
yeah, well, I send it to her in a format that she posts up.
Interesting.
We use it already.
That's,
We've been.
Yeah.
okay, all right, thank you. I'll, maybe there was some miscommunication, I'll clarify it for myself.
I don't think other departments, I think the library does it, and I don't think, we're not getting, and maybe this is something you can mention at the department heads, I don't think we're feeding Ms. Fritzen enough information for her to send over. So we have the mechanism for her to send it over, but we're not getting it from the departments to her.
Okay. And the SIDS, I guess, do you get information from them to send to Joy?
From the,
Then they would send it directly.
They would do it directly,
Yeah,
okay.
they should
All
send
right,
it.
thank you, okay. So, I represented Maplewood because the mayor wasn't able to down at the Senate and the House of Representatives and United States Army Corps of Engineers. This is about the Rahway River Flood Control Project. The mayor's council of 11 towns, 5 towns represented, visited Senators Menendez and Booker, and then Representatives Frelinghauser, Payne, and Lance. First thing I just want to say is that when I said it was from Maplewood, everybody lit up. I mean, it was like we're known. They were excited to see us there. Didn't happen with every town, but it did happen with us each time. So they are all supportive of a solution for the flooding as it's been moving along, although slowly, with the Army Corps. The last piece is to do the environmental study, and the Army Corps describes some funding, moving of monies, so that hopefully, so that they would see that going forward. They didn't say it definitively, they couldn't, because, this budget situation is very difficult for the federal government this year because of the elections. So what's expected is that the Army Corps will look to fund the environmental piece of the study, and then it would move on to need budget approval for the entire project to be done. As you know, the dam for the reservation is not an option any longer. It would be opening more of drainage from the Orange Reservoir, then allowing it to fill up and gradually empty again, and then some fixes down in the Cranford area. So the Mayor's Council will continue to meet, but it was good news. Some of these, certainly Menendez had already written to the Army Corps, and he has he's on the Appropriations Committee, so he has some authority there. And the others, Lance, Payne, Booker, were all supportive. Frelinghauser has his own issues, actually, with the Raritan River. So we had a good day, and it was a lot of fun to be in Washington again. So. The last announcement is that this Saturday is the Maplewood Los Wellness Fair, co-sponsored by the three local health systems, which is Barnabas Health, Summit Medical Group, and Overlook Medical Center Atlantic Health. They have also given us a grant that will be kicked off that day. It's a community bicycle safety grant. Please come by. There's tons of fun for kids. There's going to be a healthy cooking contest. As I said, the biking grant is kicking off, which means that the youth in our community can register their bikes and get free helmets. There'll be derma scanning, which is a very quick procedure that looks at your skin more closely to determine any possible cancer growths, and you will be taught how to examine yourself. There'll be blood pressure checks. There'll be all sorts of vendors and demonstrations of the different activities and providers in town for exercise, and everything from Zumba to things I've never even heard of. So come on by and join the fun. Thank you.
Thank you.
How's our team doing?
I guess
How is our team doing?
I am the one to answer.
You guys have it right about in the middle of the pack. I'm still waiting for some of the other teams to submit their scores, but
Yes.
you guys are doing well.
How's
You're
the,
not in last
step
place.
up.
you're not going to name us the snails, right? No. Or the tortoises?
No. TC5. That's
TC5.
TC.
Okay. Mr. Brownlee?
I have no report.
I have three quick items. Let me just follow up on Ms. Leventhal's report on the Rollway River Basin flood stuff. I got an email just before I came from Senator Booker's office. They did write the letter. Senator Menendez and Senator Booker did sign it, asking the Army Corps to find some money in the 2015 work plan to fund the Upper Basin area work study. It's just unbelievable. We're asking for $1.4 million out of the trillions of dollars that are in the federal budget. So hopefully, they said they would write this letter. They did, and hopefully it will have some meaning with the Army Corps. This Saturday is Talk to the Township Committee from 9 a.m. to noon, and we'll be at the post office on Maplewood Avenue. And my last item is I did receive an email from the chair of the Historic Preservation Commission asking that I send a letter to the state saying that Memorial Park is owned by the township and that the governing body is in favor of it being listed in the National and State Register of Historic Places, and they're going for some additional study work to do some of the study along Baker. So I just want to make sure everybody's okay with that.
What are the implications?
Well, I think it's just a letter of support before it gets, well, you know what the implications are. If it's listed in the state, then we have to get permission to do anything.
And the feds are even.
And the feds are even more. But it's listed on National Historic Register. It just says that we're in favor of it. It doesn't say that we've applied for it.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Okay. Anything else?
Mr. Chair, I move to adjourn.
And is there a second?
Yeah.
No one's going to second it? All in favor?
Second.
Aye.
Second,
Thank you very
third.
much. We will be home at our next meeting, which is October 7th, 2014. Home at Town Hall. All right.
He's
I
gonna
got
be
one
out.
stop at 9.